Welcome. My name's Duncan Anderson, and I'm going to talk to you about cognitive business. So hopefully nobody's going to get up and walk out and go to a different session. This is what you're here for. Cognitive business. So who's heard about IBM Watson in the room? Fantastic. Our marketing's working. Good. I'm the CTO for IBM Watson in Europe, and we refer to Watson as a cognitive system. Often people outside of IBM talk about the phrase of artificial intelligence. And as soon as you talk about that, you start to think about different ideas about what you could do with computers. I was talking with a customer last week who was asking me about how do customers normally get started with doing things around AI and cognitive and Watson. And do they issue RFPs and RFIs to vendors like IBM and say, tell us all about your stuff? And actually, that virtually never happens, right? Because most people are not thinking yet about the possibilities. So it's people like me that are going out and trying to open eyes around what's possible around artificial intelligence and cognitive systems. So I'm going to give you a kind of glimpse of some of the things that we're doing in Watson, and hopefully open your eyes today about the possibilities around the new opportunities, new types of things that you can do with computers like this. So I mentioned the AI phrase, and it's something that is both a blessing and a curse for us, right? Because it's a blessing because everyone's talking about AI, but it's a curse because as soon as you talk about AI, people immediately start thinking about things like this, right? Ex Machina. Who's seen Ex Machina, the movie? Yeah, a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely go and see it. It's really great. But it's science fiction, right? It's not real. So as much as I'd love to be standing here saying, we can build one of these with IBM Watson, right? That is quite some time away, right? We're not there yet. So, but we can do some really cool things, right? So let's park the sci-fi and let's look at what's actually happening in this area right now. So the first thing we tend to look at when we're talking about cognitive systems is what kind of data have you got? Most people are familiar with the stuff on the far left-hand side, you know, sort of transactional data, customer records, this kind of stuff, sat in a database, stuff you've been processing for many years. With cognitive systems, we're beginning to look at the stuff in the middle and to a small extent, the stuff on the right-hand side. The stuff in the middle is where I spend most of my time at the moment. Right? So natural language processing, that is a huge thing. The ability for a computer to read and understand natural language text that a human has written, that's been written for another human to read, but now a computer can understand that and make sense of it. Right? So the ability to process analyst reports, tweets, emails, texts, etc., understand what these things are talking about, understand the emotions being expressed by humans when they're writing language, for example. This stuff is incredibly powerful and brings about completely new types of applications. And then on the far right-hand side, things like the Internet of Things, which is another kind of big buzzword thing right now. Lots of people talking about this stuff. Sensors all over the place, emitting little messages, telling you about what's going on. What can you do with this stuff? Again, big focus. But much more in the emerging side. I'd say right now the natural language processing is the main focus of this stuff. Images and video, the ability to actually look inside an image and see what the objects are in the image, see if there's faces there, who the face is, what kind of gender they are, what age they might be, etc. This is stuff that is very practical. Right? We're offering services in IBM Watson right now to do this kind of stuff. So it's really real. But when I start talking about data, people often start thinking about data scientists, right? So data scientists, people who his job is to find the needle in the haystack. They're looking through this data, running algorithms on it, trying to spot there's some kind of correlation between, I don't know, people who tweet about Watson and people who buy Watson, for example, right? That there's some kind of correlation there, and therefore you should go and talk to all the people that have tweeted about Watson in the audience today, right? So that's an obvious one. It's probably, you don't need data scientists to work that one out, but the ability to do that kind of stuff and to trawl through it is a big focus for a data scientist. But most of my time is actually not spent with these guys. It's spent with these guys, the developers, right? Because developers can now build new types of applications. I'm going to take you through and show you a quick overview of some of the things that we're building with developers and cognitive systems like Watson. By the way, don't you just love this photo? It sort of summarizes all the prejudices about developers. The guy's got his hair over his face, he's got his headphones on, he's got his laptop plastered in stickers, and there's a can of Red Bull on his desk. It's kind of like if you could put all the prejudices into one photograph, that photograph has them, including the not safe for work stickers on his laptop. So here's an example of one of the things that we've done with Watson. So the first thing, by the way, quick hands up, who's heard about Jeopardy and Watson? Yeah, so Jeopardy was where we started in Watson. We built Watson as a computer system that went and played this weird US TV game show called Jeopardy, where it competed against humans and beat the world's best human players in Jeopardy. A bit like kind of American version of Mastermind, really. And so we started there, but the first thing we did after playing a game show was we went and did something really serious and tried to save people's lives. And this is Watson for oncology. And we worked with one of the top clinics in the US called Memorial Sloan Kettering. And MSK, it's a bit easier to say than Memorial Sloan Kettering, MSK is renowned as being one of the best places for oncology. Right? So if you're unfortunate enough to have cancer, it's a good place to go to. So we built a system which distilled not just the structured traditional data that was sitting in their databases, but also all the unstructured information, doctors' notes, research reports, stuff that was written for humans, Watson processed and understood, and we trained this system with the MSK doctors to diagnose and produce possible treatment plans. Right? So if you're an MSK, you've got some of the best doctors in the world. You don't need this system. But if you're in another part of the world which doesn't have those best doctors, distilling the expertise of them into a computer system so that the doctors that you do have can consult essentially the world's best doctors as part of your treatment, that's a really great thing. So this is now being implemented in a Bumrungrad hospital in Taiwan. Right? So the idea is you distill the expertise in places where it sits, and then you can expand and scale that expertise in other parts of the world. Right? So literally saving people's lives. We like to have, in Watson, we have team meetings every month, and we like to invite an external speaker in to talk about the impact of some of the work that we're doing. A couple of months ago, we had a pediatric oncologist come to talk to us. And this guy was a specialist in brain cancer for young children. And he talked to us about the struggles he has, because it's obviously a very difficult job to do, because you're dealing with small children with a very difficult disease, and the outcome is not always positive. And he was talking about some of the struggles, which are not necessarily the things that you'd think about. Right? So we would think about the science end of it. But actually, he was talking about, as a small child, going into a hospital. It's a big, scary white place with lots of old people, right? It's not child-friendly. And so this photograph here is kind of just demonstrates some of the things that he was talking about to us, about the simple things that they do to try and make the experience less scary. Right? So just simply projecting things onto this, I think this is an MRI scanner, and just projecting things on it to make it feel a little less white, a little less clinical, a little less scary. So the science end of it is great, and the stuff that we're doing with oncology is fantastic at the science end. But we're also doing stuff at the more simple end, like this. So there's a news report last week around a piece of work we're doing with the Alder Hey Hospital in the UK. And this is about building a system for young people who are going into hospital to have a procedure, and they have concerns, worries, fears. And again, I was sitting down with the doctors at Alder Hey talking to them about their experiences, and they're saying that a lot of the time children will just clam up, right? Particularly teenagers. They just, the doctor knows that they're scared, that they're worried about something, but they can't express themselves. They just clam up and they just don't ask questions. So the idea here is we're building an app that will go onto their mobile devices, and then they can chat with Watson. And we'll teach this system about all of the things that children are scared about in hospitals. You know, is it going to hurt? What happens when I wake up from the operation? How quickly do I go to sleep? You know, to us, it's kind of simple things, but they're things that are going around in a child's head, and they're not asking those questions of the doctor, but maybe they will ask those questions of a computer, because the kind of sort of old, scary bloke with a beard talking to a young child thing, that goes away because they're just chatting with this computer on their phone, right? So that's the idea here. So relatively simplistic, but actually could have a profound impact on the well-being and the sort of mental health of people who are having difficulties in hospitals. Here's an example of this isn't the hospital scenario, this is a similar kind of thing, but for a mythical bank called Personal Choice. And so the idea here is that we've trained this system all about your banking needs. And this is somebody chatting with it about they've got some fraud on their account. It's traditionally something you pick up the phone and call a call center, but you can whip out your phone and you can have a chat with Watson. This is a real system. I just created a video to make it easier to show today. But it's a real system where we're chatting with Watson, and Watson is going through, it's pulling out records from your account, asking if you recognize those to check if there's fraud on the account. Here you can see it's talking about where you're going to pick up your new credit card because we've cancelled the previous credit card, and so we're just dipping into the Maps app to see the location of the local branch. And then we're popping up a QR code on the phone so that the person who's lost their credit card can show that as a kind of simple auth check when they get into the branch. So it's a very simplistic scenario, but it shows how you can have a chat-based app. You're talking to a computer, and the computer understands what you're talking about, understands various ways of expressing yourself. So you don't have to type in a command. You can just express yourself. You can say, I've lost my credit card, or I was chatting with my granny on the bus last week, and when I got off, I couldn't find my wallet. Right? But it doesn't matter how you express yourself. The system understands natural language. And here we are where the person using it has expressed some anger, and Watson is able to detect strong emotions. So it's detected that there's a strong emotion here of anger and transferred the person across to a human agent. And so now the human agent is chatting with the person who's lost their credit card in the same user interface. Right? And this is a trend that we see a lot. You know, despite all the hype about AI, actually what we see happening a lot is AI is working in concert with humans. The combination of the AI to answer the simple bit at the front, but when things get a bit more complex or when emotions are involved, we bring in the human, and the human chats in the same interface, and the human and the AI work together in partnership to solve the problem at hand. Right? So that idea is really coming up a lot at the moment. Lots of people interested. You may have seen Facebook made an announcement a month or so ago about the ability to place bots into Facebook. Right? So we've been building bots using Watson to go into Facebook. So here you are. This is a Watson bot in Facebook. So this is the same conversation that was in that video just now on a bank's mobile app. Now the same conversation is happening in Facebook. Right? So this idea that you can train the AI once, and then you can expose the chat capability over different channels. That might be your mobile app or your website, or it might be Facebook in this instance, or any other. There's a whole myriad of these chat apps on phones. You know, my teenage daughter's got about 3 or 4 of them installed. I lose track of what she uses each one for, to be honest. But they all pretty much now have got APIs where you can hook into those systems, and you can build a presence for your business in Facebook or Telegram or WhatsApp, any of these kind of chat apps. Right? But the idea that we're talking about is the ability to train an AI once, and then you integrate it with all those different channels, even over the Apple Watch. Right? So you can have a chat app on the Apple Watch where you can talk to it, and the exact same conversation happens. We had that implemented as well. Right? So the technology that you use to get access to the API varies enormously, but you can train it once. Here's another example of a system that we built. This is a demonstration. So you play a YouTube video, and this is Emma Watson's he for she speech. And you play the video, and in real time, the system is transposing what she's talking about. So here, on the right-hand side, is the speech recognition engine working, transposing what she's talking about into text. And in parallel with that, as we're getting the text, we're then using another capability on Watson, which is called the Concept Insights API. And the Concept Insights allows you to take a bunch of text and work out what topic is being talked about, what the concept is. Right? And often the concept is not actually the words in the text at all, it's something more underlying. And on the left-hand side, over here, I think I've got a laser here, haven't I? Yeah, over here, you see the concepts that are being talked about. Right? So you imagine if you're a media company, right, the ability to process what's happening around the world in real time, as it's happening, turn it into text, and then turn that text into the concepts that are being talked about, essentially index real-time content as it happens. Incredibly powerful. And then up here, you see we've got these recommendations, because if you know the concepts that are being talked about, then you can find other videos or other websites or documents, etc., that have got similar concepts in them. So you can make recommendations because you understand the nature of what's going on. Right? So that ability to process in real time and to understand natural language, to understand text, to understand image. So I have an app that I wrote on my phone using the Watson Image Service that I can take photographs of people, and I won't do it today. But I did do it once in an audience, and asked for somebody, sort of volunteer from the audience, and took a photograph of this person. And as I was photographing them, it's like a slow motion car crash, right? Because this guy had probably had a hard life, right? To put it politely, I suspected he was probably not as old as he looked, and this app guesses the age of a face in an image, right? So of course it guessed the age, and it guessed the age of the person who'd had a hard life, and this guy was not quite as old as Watson guessed, and he wasn't too happy about it. But it was, it was essentially an honest guess, because most of us would have guessed this guy was 55 and not 45, right? So we can do this stuff, right? The ability to process emotions, right? So we talked about in that clip of the bank app, we were detecting the emotion of the user. So we can detect anger, joy, sadness, happiness, right? Strong emotions. And then the system can adapt and change how it behaves based on the emotion of the person using it, the system, right? So today, often that means that we do something different, like we might transfer across to a human. But as the capabilities of these systems increase, we will imagine adaptable dialogue, where there might be a dialogue where you're having with a system where it's the kind of sort of get something done dialogue, right? And then for some reason something's not going well for you and you get a bit angry with it. And then it sort of morphs into the sort of friendly coaching dialogue, which is a bit more supportive and understands that you're being frustrated and therefore explains concepts a bit more rather than just assuming you know what it means. Right? So these things are, they're real. Right? People are absolutely building really transformative systems using this kind of technology. And I stand here as somebody from IBM Watson. We started this revolution back in 2011 when we played the Jeopardy game, and that was a big advancement in the science in 2011. But it's a few years ago now, right? And you'll just see all of the talk in the industry and the press around AI, around cognitive systems. There's a rash of AI movies last year, Ex Machina being one of them. But there's this, I think, increasing focus around what can we do with this stuff. So the big question is, how does this work for your business? What are you going to do with it? Because this stuff is now real, and people are struggling to work out, what does a chatbot mean for me? What could I do with a chatbot? What would my business do with a chatbot? Right? and that is going to get increasingly part of the discussion as we see, people like Facebook. Google got their developer conference next week, I think it is. Big rumors that they're going to announce some AI stuff there, right? So everyone's doing it. How do we actually apply this stuff into your business? And the kind of key thing behind all of this is that the sort of hype that you hear isn't real, right? AI isn't going to take over the world and run everything. Everything that I'm seeing is AI supporting humans. It's about accelerating the expertise and empowering people, right? So the first example of the hospital with the oncology advice, that's not replacing people. That's taking expertise from one part of the world, deploying it to another part of the world, improving people's lives, right? The Alder Hey Hospital example, again, it's not about replacing people. It's about making children's lives better. Even chatbots, we're seeing most of the interest I see talking with customers around chatbots, it's all around how does the chatbot work with the humans? Because everyone knows that technology is not perfect today, and so for most, even half sophisticated environments, you can't deploy a chatbot and expect it to answer 100% of the questions. There's always going to be a rump of things which are more complex and difficult, and therefore that's where the humans come in. So the big question is, how does the AI work with the humans to solve the problem? How can I make it a supportive environment? Right? So that's what we talk about, is this kind of enhance, scale, and accelerate human expertise. So what will you do with Watson? So that's just a very quick overview of the kind of things which are possible with artificial intelligence, with cognitive systems, with IBM Watson. We have a developer's site, so if anyone in the audience is interested in playing with this stuff yourselves, if you just go and Google Watson Developer Cloud, it will take you to our website. The Developer Cloud, there's a free 30-day subscription, so you can just sign up, use it for free for 30 days. After the free trial, there's a free tier, right? So individual developers want to have a play with this stuff. Low-level usage, it's not going to cost you a penny, right? So you can have a play with it. Build a chatbot yourself, build an image recognition service to embarrass your friends about how old they are. All this stuff's there. Do speech recognition, right? Play with it. Work out what you can do. Work out what the implications of this technology are for the future of the things that you guys do. Okay, thank you for your time.